Meeting Amber was amazing. She was both fun, but down to earth, loving, and adventurous. And indeed, we had a lot of adventures together, and she also forced me out of my non-stop working life, as at that time I was striving and pushing forward to climb the ladder in a career, and made me go traveling with her. We visited San Diego, Catalina, England, Wales, Italy, Thailand, and more. We even got some sailing in. It was like my dream was becoming a reality.
Finally, on a boat.
Look at that. She's clearly becoming a natural. But then, well, I'll let her tell you what happened.
Before I met Peter, I had never thought about sailing at all. I didn't even know what a sailboat was. So I would say that, it was challenging. It was like fun, to like explore this with Peter. But it was also like his dream and not mine. And so it became kind of like a conflict, given that I kind of got sick. I mean, I just felt like sailing's really boring. You just sit there, and I felt really nauseous, and it was cold. We're in the Bay Area. It's like really cold right now. This was a couple of years ago too, so I was younger, and like I had my own stuff that was really important to me, which was like I was in midwifery school, and I really wanted to focus on that. And I'm also like a very physical person, so the idea of being trapped on how big was Sharky?
23.
Being trapped on 23 feet in the middle of an ocean gives me claustrophobia.
Yeah.
So, and I have fear of the ocean. Like, it's a huge, beautiful ocean, and that also is very powerful, and it's more powerful than us. So it feels like I have fear that I have to work through when I'm sailing, and I don't even know how much like that has like hardly been touched, because I feel like once we start sailing more, that will come out more.
Yeah, it's
like
gonna be
I
interesting.
can feel my like ugh, when I talk about it.
Okay, so when I remember going sailing with you on Sharky, we would start from Sausalito.
Yep.
And even in the parking lot, I tried to get you out of the truck, and you just like sat there in the parking lot, and you didn't want to get out of the truck. I'm like, all right, we're here. And you're like, okay, but I don't know, I'm cold or something. It was just like, you just didn't want to.
I'm really lame.
But it can be hard to get you going sometimes.
Yeah. So before, I don't know, I wasn't committed. So, but also like the boat, you couldn't even stand up in. It was just very uncomfortable.
You could stand up in the outside.
So this is like, I feel like this is a type of boat that you want to go on a journey on.
So then what were your dreams, when you met me growing up or at that time?
I think, Peter and I are very different. Like, Peter has had from like such a young age, like dreaming of sailing. And I don't know, when I was a kid, I didn't really like dream about the future. I felt like I was just very like present and just like playing, and I wasn't very focused of like what I would do when I was older. I always thought it was really actually annoying.
She's always telling me to stop dreaming.
When like, no.
Focus on the present.
I mean, I just found it annoying when like, especially in school, and they're like, okay, like let's get ready for the SATs, and you're like 6, and it's like, I just want to like be 6. Anyway, so, but I always knew like from a young age that I wanted to travel. And from a young age, I loved midwifery, and so that was just like my big focus. Yeah, so because midwifery
when you were young,
the
you didn't
support of women giving birth.
Right.
And I love dancing and traveling and camping. I went camping on my own when I was 16, and like So, I love being out in nature. That's always been such a huge passion of mine.
See, guys, she sounds like a perfect candidate
But
to be a sailor girl. She likes camping. She likes the outdoors.
But I like on land.
That's the thing. Before we met
I
each
love
other,
the ocean,
you wouldn't have
but I don't
thrown in that anti-sailing zinger on land. You were actually pretty open to it.
When we first met.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, because I didn't have any experience. But then once I had the experience, it was like, oh, I feel really sick. This isn't actually that enjoyable. And I've just never had the experience to be on a boat long enough to, like, get used to being on a boat. And they say that it takes a couple days to get there, so I just haven't had that experience yet. Over the years since knowing Peter, going out, it's like I started to realize singing helped me because that helps relax the nervous system. And that was like, oh, I get why pirates sing.
And
alcohol. Those two things. It was like,
alcohol
I'm stepping onto the boat, so I'm going to just take a little sip.
Hold our position. And Amber got this great beer. That's
my only smart thing I've done today.
She seems a little bit more lively now after her being clammed
Alcoholic beverage.
Yeah, clammed up in sea sickness.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have a few hours left of sunlight. I think we're gonna make it back alive.
We better. Hopefully. I think we're still in the same spots when we started.
Well, we definitely drifted quite a ways out.
But yeah, I love nature, and sailing is such a beautiful way to appreciate nature. It's just that I haven't had enough experience to feel like it feels great on my body, so that's the resistance. I want to be hiking, running, climbing, swimming, whatever. And yes, all of that can be within sailing, but it's always felt like I'm just kind of...
Can be within cruising.
I don't know if you can tell here, but I tried pretty hard to sell Amber on my sailing dream. It never worked. She only thought about seasickness and cold when thinking of sailing, which is pretty understandable. So now let me tell the last bit of the story for this video. I know a lot of the footage in these videos is pretty old, but the next part of this video will have especially poor footage, but I think it's still worth it to tell the story. The year was 2020. Remember that year? I had gone from the lowest position to the highest in the IT department in the 6 years of working for the same company, but I always wanted to start my own business. And finally, the time came. I got a good opportunity to start a business in the transportation sector, one that would be finally my main gig. But I knew that this business would be running 360 days a year, 7 days a week, and so would I. So I set out for one final sailing trip. It was August. The forecast was for extremely light winds. It was a blue sky with some cotton candy clouds reflecting off the water like a mirror. The giant gods of the wind slept peacefully and woke slowly that day. I remember thinking that it looked too calm to even bother sailing, but since it was my last opportunity before starting up the business, I figured that I might as well go out. I knew I wouldn't be sailing for a long time afterwards. August 15th, 2020. I anchored lazily that evening in Richardson Bay off of Sausalito like I normally do, right by Cone Rock. I slept for about 4 hours, and at 2 a.m. I awoke. I noticed flashing lights, so I popped my head out of the hatch to look around. On the horizon, I saw purple flashes. I thought it might be lightning, but still wasn't convinced since it was flashing like 2 or 3 times every 10 seconds. So I Googled it. What I got was a bit terrifying given that I was on a 23-foot boat that bobs like a cork in even the smallest of seas. Black flag warning. Warning of winds over 50 miles per hour. And tornado warning.
Keep in mind that this is the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's extremely abnormal to get a tornado warning for this area. And the water still barely had a ripple in it. I quickly assessed my options. Head back to the marina. That would take up to 2 hours. Run the boat aground ashore didn't seem too helpful or responsible. So I battened down the hatches and waited. The winds built steadily. 10 knots, 15, 20, 30, and then several levels beyond that. The waves started coming in soon after. Guys, I don't have video footage of that, but it was crazy. I lost the tiller brake and autopilot, so I had to hand steer at anchor to point the bow into the sharp building waves. The Coast Guard warned through the radio many times to go below decks due to the danger from lightning. Lightning was falling from the sky like rain. The rain itself also began to sweep over me. It was one of the few times that I just had to exhale and leave it to the powers above me, literally. I thanked God that I was likely the smallest sailboat around with the shortest mast. And next to me was a shiny new, very large Beneteau, probably over 40 feet. I was a safe distance away from them, for normal conditions. At this point, the winds were somewhat north of 40 knots. I couldn't tell you if it was 45 or 60, since it was my first time experiencing that level and didn't have the capacity to measure it. Hanging on, not hitting my head, and just staying put in the cockpit took constant determination and strength. If I let go of the tiller, I would have turned sideways and swamped on the waves. And after that, I'm not sure what would have happened. I started the motor just to help me maneuver even though I was anchored. Then the currents showed up. Sharky and I were quickly swept towards the Golden Gate, towards that shiny Beneteau's port quarter. The waves were massive and square, and I fell off every one with a crash. Incredible for this location. Every time Sharky crashed off of a wave, we pulled closer to that Beneteau, dragging hard and fast. I hailed the Coast Guard, who recommended that I put out an extra anchor, which I managed to do. Still no improvement. By this time, the winds had shifted almost 180 degrees. I was repeatedly trying to hail the unknown sailboat. Channel 16, sailboat near Cone Rock, sailboat near Cone Rock, this is Sharky. We are in danger of colliding. I was now within a few boat lengths and still dragging fast. My motor fighting these currents was completely powerless. Ever reliable, full throttle, and I couldn't even tell a difference. I had one wave left. One more wave, and I was going to not hit the boat, but rather absolutely slam and smash into that Beneteau. I even considered cutting the anchor line, but given the size of the waves, how badly Sharky was hobby horsing, and needing to hold on to the tiller and just hold on for dear life, I knew that wasn't an option anyways. The anchor rode was bar tight. The world was spinning, and I braced for impact. At the last wave, the Benny gave a short blast on their motor, pushing them to starboard. I quickly displaced their vacated spot, and then they finally responded on the radio to me. They were not going to re-anchor, but rather stay on the engine for the remainder of the night, holding position. While 5 boat lengths away was hardly appropriate, we were both managing. The stress levels plummeted. I exhaled. The winds eventually relaxed into a comfortable gale. The Benny asked me if I needed anything else. The sailing community is truly awesome. I realized that for me and my 23-foot boat, what was truly terrifying was for them a manageable storm. The next morning was one of the most beautiful ones ever. But sailing, I want to get the hell home. I pointed east, and after a quick pause due to lightning, I chased the receding storm back to the marina. I later learned that this event was so extreme, it was given a name, the August Lightning Siege, which transformed into the August wildfire siege. In less than 30 minutes, over 200 lightning strikes were recorded. The National Weather Service estimated 2,500 lightning strikes that day, which led to wildfires that burned well over 2 million acres in California. Exhausted, I drove back to the house to tell Amber the story. But there was a different story there. We broke up later that day. I had a lot of dreams, but all I have left now is the present. 7 days a week of work, a sailboat that I can't use, and, well, the end of this video. Sometimes your dreams just crash and burn. Do you ever feel like giving up? If you do, I can understand. I can understand why. All right. Talk to you later, guys.